Bedheads, welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings, episode 14, Classic Cocktails, or What Are We Thinking? We just keep getting crazier and crazier with these shows. I'm here with my special regular co-host, Robbie Rass. Rob, what's going on, brother?
What's happening? No, not too much. Just living the dream out here.
You're pretty excited. I mean, we're going to be off topic for a couple minutes here, but you must be pretty excited because your Giants are in the playoff series of their lives right now. Game 7 tonight, right?
Game 7. It's Game 7. You get Game 7, and it's your team, and you got to be happy about it. But I don't know. I feel like if the best players on the field step up and do what they're capable of, then I think the Giants will win. Because I really do think that they are the better team. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. Everybody wants to talk about how much of a role the Royals are on, but they had lost 2 in a row going into yesterday's game. So anyway, it'll be fun, that's for sure.
Now, I was actually tempted to wear my San Francisco cap tonight, but I couldn't find it, along with the cigar that I was going to smoke tonight, which is the Davidoff 2000, which I also couldn't smoke. And that's probably a sign that I have far too many cigars in my humidor.
So you went with Royals colors instead, huh?
So this
You're
is
Canadian,
this
you
is
get a pass. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, of course, I had no idea. I wouldn't even put the two together and given me an hour. I should be in San Francisco because I've been to San Francisco. I like San Francisco, cool city, and because it's the only city I really know, I would pick them over KC. Sorry, KC. You can send your email to John at cigarfederation.com.
I forgot to put my headphones on, so I'm going to do that now.
Roger that. So while you do that, I'm going to talk about the cigar, which I did go with, which I actually didn't think I had. I've been super pumped to try out some of the warped stuff. We've been going nuts over it since we went to the booth. I went crazy and picked up one of their Jaradors, which, if you can get your hands on it, it's super cool. So I went with the warped, and I'm going to butcher the name here, so you can feel free to correct me. The warped Florida Valley.
Flor de Valle.
De Valle. So that's Spanish, I'm sure.
Correct.
Which I do not speak coherently.
It is Spanish for flower of the valley.
All right. So I dig their stuff. I dug their stuff when we smoked at the IPCPR. This was actually my first pick, and I didn't think I had any. And then I went rooting through my box or my several humidors of too many cigars that I have, and I found it. I kind of started off with it before we got into the pairing here, just to get my palate ready, and it's exactly what I wanted for pairing. It's a little creamy, a little peppery, and that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want a Cuban because we kind of want to appeal to every man here, and I wanted something with a little bit more bite to it. And if I get my pairings wrong tonight, it's not because of the cigar. This is the exact cigar I had in mind.
It's funny. I was on Cigar Federation earlier today, asking people what I should smoke because I wasn't sure what to smoke, and Charlie gets on and says, "Oh, if you have any Cuban Romeo and Julietas, then those go really well with an old fashioned." I'm like, "Well, okay, but we want to do more of an everyman." It's funny because you use the same term that I did. And what are we smoking? You're smoking a Flor de Valle, which isn't necessary. I guess they've hit the market, but they're not going to be everywhere. I mean, none of my local shops are going to have them. And I decided to go with the Headley Grange drumstick, which I don't even think you can find anymore. So it's funny.
Yeah,
we wanted to go everyman, and we went super snobby.
Well, and I mean, you're absolutely right. The pairings that we're doing tonight, the drinks, and it was really your idea, and a great idea it was to go with an everyman cocktail. Like, these are not fancy highfalutin cocktails. This is literally the opposite of our highfalutin show, where, and we'll get into the history of some of these beverages, but I mean, we're talking like everyday working class Joe wants a drink. 40, 50 years ago, these are the drinks that he would have had.
Yeah, old school, classic cocktails, which, I mean, classic stuff like that, it's been, thanks to Mad Men and things of that nature, been really popular over the last few years. These are really the only cocktails, I'll be honest, that I drink, man. If I'm not drinking just straight whiskey or bourbon or scotch or rum, I mean, this is what I'm ordering. And half the time I go to a bar and I say, "Hey, can I get an old fashioned?" The bartender will sometimes look at me kind of sideways. It's like, well, you should know how to make this, bro. But I'll walk them through it if I have to. But a lot of the places that I like to go, because we don't go out for too many cocktails, but when we do, I tend to go to places that feature drinks like this. One of the drinks I'm having today is a Manhattan, another classic cocktail. There's a restaurant in the Ferry Building in San Francisco. Which, did you go to the Ferry Building when you were out here?
I don't believe I did. No.
That's a lot of fun. It's a cool little spot. A lot of nice restaurants in there. Some of the more popular restaurants in the city. Slanted Door is a real popular restaurant. It's in the building there. Anyway, they had a vanilla Manhattan, a spiced vanilla Manhattan. So I ordered that, and it was fantastic. And I had to ask the guy, like, "What did you guys do?" He's like, "We just they put a vanilla bean in a bottle with some vodka and just infused it with the vanilla bean." And so ever since then, my wife and I have been doing that. I didn't do that for today's show, but we like to play around with that kind of stuff. So this is right up my alley for sure.
Now I got to say, what was interesting to me is, first of all, I ended up going with classic cocktails, 2/3 of which I know and have drank on a regular basis, because the other sort of 22 classic cocktails I was looking at, not only have I never had them, I don't have any. I have like maybe one ingredient, which is the booze in the house, and the rest of the ingredients I was looking through going, what is bitters? I have no idea what the hell bitters is. What is muddling? What's going on here? So I'll talk about the drinks, but I went old-fashioned, a mojito, and a Caesar, sometimes called a Bloody Caesar, but truly only just called a Caesar. And for the old-fashioned, I mean, man, I must have dropped $60-70 on bourbon, on bitters, on all this stuff to make this one drink. And of course, yeah. So I mean, this is what it looks like. I mean, it kind of looks cool. I got the little,
you got a fancy pants. See, you are highfalutin, no matter what. You drop $50 to make one cocktail. Well, you can make a bunch of them, but
yeah. I mean, I went with some high end. I went with some Knob Creek 9 bourbon, which is probably out of, talk about an everyman bourbon. Knob Creek 9 is not an everyman bourbon. There was a lot of bourbons on the shelf for like $10-15, and I'm like, you know what? I'm a classy guy sometimes. I like bourbon. I want to go with a bourbon that I'm going to enjoy after the show if I'm going to spend the money, and I went with the Knob Creek 9, and it's got a lot of awards.
Now, when you say Knob Creek 9, is that like a special? It's not just the standard Knob Creek?
Yeah, it's been specially aged for 9 years. I think, if I remember from our bourbon show, bourbon needs to be aged 2 years in the barrel. So it is unusual for a bourbon to be 9-year aged. Obviously, that's 7 years in which they're not making money, but they can market that as a premium product, charge a little bit more. Sure. Presumably, it's also tastier because it's had more time to marry in the barrel.
Cool. So which drinks are we going to start with?
Well, I kind of already got started with the old-fashioned.
Well, I'll join you there then.
So you're also what did you go with? What 3 drinks?
I stuck with the bourbon whiskey theme, old-fashioned, with what did I use in the old-fashioned? Bullet bourbon, and I think Bullet's relatively local. Pretty standard bourbon. It's not too expensive, but it's got pretty good flavor to it. It's a little bit sweeter than some of the other bourbons. And
I'd like to point out that you have what's the common tumbler. Like, I've gone with the completely wrong tumbler for the old-fashioned. You think about your tumbler for a second? You've gone with what the actual tumbler should be.
Well, the thing is, it's a tumbler is an old-fashioned. It's an old-fashioned glass. That's what it's called. This one's a little bit different. It's hard to tell, but it kind of tapers at the bottom, so it fits. It came with a set with a decanter that my wife got me for Christmas. So it's got the standard round top, but it's got a kind of a tapered bottom. And that's, if you've never made an old-fashioned, there's so many different ways to make it. Some people will they'll stir in, an ice cube until it melts, and then they'll start mixing all the other ingredients. The way I do it, start with the sugar cube. You douse the sugar cube with bitters. Everybody says about 3 dashes. I put like 5 or 6. I always go heavy. I like the spice. Maraschino cherry, which my wife actually made some of her own. They're really, really flavorful. So I use one of those and slice an orange. Put that in there. You muddle that all up. And muddling just means you kind of squish it. If you've got a muddler, it kind of looks like something you would stamp on the ground to kind of get a little flat a flat spot, but or like something you would beat a steak with to tenderize it. You muddle that up, and then it's just 2 shots of bourbon and ice, and that's it. And then you stir it. My ice is melted a little bit, but one of my favorite drinks, and like I said, I always order it. The reason I went with the Headley Grange drumstick is because it's got that spice on the tongue. I wanted that to combat really the sweetness of all these drinks, because none of these drinks are very spicy. So that was why I went with that cocktail, or that cigar.
Well, it sounds like I have, again, no idea. I've never made an old-fashioned before in my life. I also went with bitters. I've read that you can add a lemon slice. You can add orange peel, orange slices. So I didn't have a muddler, but I did my best. I also saturated with about probably 4 or 5 shakes, which I guess was about 3.5 ounces of bitters. Added my 2 ounces of bourbon, and then I added some club soda, which I read in some recipes.
Can I slow you down there? You did not put 3.5 ounces of bitters in there.
That's correct.
The couple of dashes.
Yeah,
3.5 ounces of bitters would have been like half the bottle.
That's right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Just for anybody listening.
No, please, because anyone who makes this drink with 3 ounces of bitters is going to be in for a shock of a lifetime.
That'll wake you up in the morning.
So the other thing that I did, which I read on a number of classic cocktail sites, is I actually rolled the bitters and the sugar around the inside of the glass. So they said coat the inside of the glass, almost like if you're doing a whiskey tasting, you might roll a little bit of cheap whiskey in the inside of the glass just to saturate it, get some of the water out. It's good. I've never had an old-fashioned before. It's got a little spice to it. I would say right off the bat, I am digging the warped Florida Valle with the old-fashioned. I tell you what, man, I could drink and smoke this all night long. These two are absolutely made for each other. You got a little bit of pepper on the Florida Valle, and the creaminess offsets the bitters in the old-fashioned.
Yeah, if you're drinking an old-fashioned, you're going to get that bourbon flavor. You're going to get some spice from the bitters. You're going to get some sweetness from the sugar, and you're going to get some citrus from the orange. And it's kind of just a combination of that. For me, I wanted to go with something with a little bit of spice to offset that. This combination is good. It's not great. I think it really highlights the cigar more than the cocktail itself, which I'm fine with because it's a damn good cigar. It brings out the citrus notes in the cocktail a lot more than normal for me. It becomes a very heavy citrus flavor, which I like, and I think it kind of cuts the flavor from the cigar. It cuts the spice. So they kind of slap each other in the face a little bit, but kind of in like a fun, I like it kind of way.
So we have a question from the audience, and I actually, ironically, am unprepared to answer this question for once. Do you understand what bitters are? Because I've never bought bitters before. I have no idea what bitters are, and I went hunting in the liquor store for bitters before.
I just went to a craft spirits event, and there was craft everything there. Craft bitters, craft this, craft that. We bought, my wife and I bought tonic, a craft tonic mix it's basically concentrated, and you just add club soda to it. And it's a very different take on tonic. It doesn't have that medicinal astringence that you get from like a Canada Dry tonic, no offense. Very, very different. Bitters come in so many different flavors. I don't know exactly what they're made of. Some of them have alcohol in them, some of them don't, but it's negligible. But basically, it's something you're going to put 3 or 4 drops of the bitters into your drink. One thing I made an old-fashioned at a party the other day, and they had cherry bitters, which enhanced the flavor of the maraschino cherry in the cocktail, and I really liked that. I'm going to have to find some. It's made by Woodford Reserve. They make those bitters. But I don't exactly know what bitters are made of. I should have prepared that. I should have brought the bottle out, actually. But these are just Aguarsta bitters, I think is the name. And oddly enough, that company that makes I'll have to look it up so I know exactly that I'm saying it right. But they actually make rum, and they were at the at this craft spirits event that I went to, and I tasted some of their rum, 12, 24 year aged rum. They had a 7-year aged, so it was aged rum. It was really good. Although their 24 was good, but it wasn't great. They had some Diplomatico there that was just off the hook. But so in a long-winded way, I don't exactly know what bitters are made of, but it's a small additive to your drink. You dash it in, and the bottle it comes in. I mean, you have to shake it, and it comes out, and it's almost like a dropper, but you're not squeezing the plunger. You shake it in 1, 2, 3, and those are your dashes of bitters.
I kind of threw you under the bus on that one because I honestly had no clue. But what I did research was, first of all, there's 6 classic cocktails, and that's from a book. The 6 classic drinks are daiquiri, Jack Rose, Manhattan, which sounds like you've got tonight, martini, old fashioned, and a sidecar. And these are considered like the 6 classic. And I think you've said before you enjoy sidecars. You commonly order sidecars.
I don't. And it's funny. My wife actually, because I had her pull the recipes for me, because she finds the best stuff. And she said, you should make a sidecar too. And I looked at it, and the one that she sent me was like a punch. It's like a cup of this, a cup of that. I was like, I'm not going to deal with it. But sidecar, and a Rob Roy is kind of a classic cocktail. If you've ever had it, that tastes like it's bad. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say that I don't like it. It tastes like, I don't know, sweat off some part of your body that you don't want to lick sweat off of. How about that? But I don't like cocktails that are based on scotch. I'm drinking scotch. I don't want a scotch cocktail.
I'm in the same boat, and unfortunately the other thing that I'm really not partial to, which the girlfriend is a huge fan of, is gin. I have not developed a taste for gin. I don't know that I'll ever develop a taste for gin. The girlfriend goes nuts over gin. I sort of looked through the classic cocktails when I was finding out what I wanted to do and avoided all gin cocktails because I was like, no matter how good this cocktail is, I'm going to still taste the gin. I'm not going to be a fan. It's probably going to ruin the pairing for me.
So I looked up bitters, and it's Angostura, Angostura. So if you went down to your local supermarket, those are the bitters that you're going to find. And I use the aromatic bitters, which are just kind of the basics. It's just it's basically just a flavor enhancer. It's gluten-free. It's 100% vegan. It's kosher. So it's all good, no matter where you are. It contains 44.7% alcohol by volume. These do, but I mean, you're using a dash of it. It's negligible. You're using an eyedropper. But it's just something that just enhances the flavor of your cocktail, and you'll get it. Orange bitters are very common, but it's one of those things that if you get into anything, like you get into cigars, I mean, you start finding out all these different types of things and different things that are unique to that particular industry. Bitters are unique to the cocktail industry, if you will. And the more that you get involved in it, you're going to find different bitters with different flavors that are used for different things.
So one of the interesting things I found when I was researching, because I like to tell, as you know, a little bit of story about some of the background of some of these drinks or beverages that we enjoy. And this is actually a very old cocktail. This goes back to the early 1800s, which is certainly not as old as some of the other alcohol that we've had on the show. Interestingly enough, the name for an old-fashioned comes from a Kentucky gentleman's club. That's the polite way of saying it. And
Boobies.
And the garnishes come, the orange slice, the lemon, the cherries, all of this actually came about, this was not part of the original recipe, but came about as a result of Prohibition in the United States. And because the booze that they were putting in these liquors were just awful. I mean, you're talking bathtub gin and just not great booze. The point of the garnish was to hide the awful taste of the booze, and that's why there's so much sugar. That's why there's all these extra things that have been added over the years, and that I found that's actually true of a lot of these classic cocktails. These extra things that were introduced over time were to hide the terrible, terrible taste of beverage. Yeah,
I believe it. You've got me feeling I should have done some research on some of these drinks, especially Manhattan, because I'm drinking one of those. I don't think you have a Manhattan. And that's another classic cocktail, which I'm actually going to move on. I mean, for me, this pairing is fine. I think that the cigar is great on its own. This drink is great on its own. Together, they're fine. I don't think they improve each other, but I don't think they hinder each other either. Um, would I seek it out again? Probably not. I would either have the Manhattan on its own, or I'd have the cigar on its own. I don't think that either one brings anything specific to the table. If I were going with the Manhattan again and I wanted to pair something with it, I think, John, you were on more of a good route with something not quite as spicy. This has a lot of spice for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
The drumstick, the Headley Grange drumstick. Maybe a regular Headley Grange would have been better. And you know, the cigar that I wanted to smoke tonight, and I probably shouldn't say that I wanted to. I kept thinking of smoking tonight. I probably should have. Was a Herrera Esteli Lonsdale, because I think that profile with this drink would work really well, because it's more along the lines of what you're smoking, John. It's got a little bit of creaminess to it. It still has that spice, and there's even some citrus notes in the cigar, mild, but you know they're there. I think that they would enhance each other a little bit.
So we've been doing this. I know this is only our 14th show, but I feel like we've been doing the show long enough that you are in my head, because on my short list of cigars for tonight was the Herrera Esteli Lonsdale.
Nice.
Specifically because it has, and again, I think a lot of these drinks, or at least the initial drinks, are almost Cuban-esque. That is, you need something a little bit creamy, not so heavy, not so peppery, to really bring out the best in both the cigar and the drink. And for me, the Herrera Lonsdale it's a no-brainer. Like, it's got a very Cuban-esque taste to it, profile. It's very creamy, very smooth. And to me, I'm happy with this pairing, because I feel like going into it, I knew the warped Flor de Valle was very smooth, creamy, had a little bit of sweetness to it, which is perfect to pair with bourbon and the bitters and a little bit of spice that comes with that. So for me, absolutely a pairing I would do again. I would absolutely recommend, if you're going to pair with an old-fashioned, you need to go, or I would recommend you should go with something creamy in that vein. Like you said, the Herrera Esteli Lonsdale, excellent choice. A lot of Cubans will go, if you have access to Cubans legally. The warped, no question, easy one to go with.
So I'm going to jump in. My next cocktail is I'm going to go with the Manhattan next, and this is fancy pants. And it's a very basic cocktail. It's just bourbon and sweet vermouth. And I actually looked up, and according to Wikipedia, and I'm reading this history, you guys will figure out why. So a popular history suggests that this drink originated in the Manhattan Club in New York City in the early 1870s, where it was invented by Dr. Ian Marshall, which that name sounds familiar, for a banquet hosted by Jenny Jerome, who later became, or I guess was, Lady Randolph Churchill, Winston Churchill's mother. The event was in honor of presidential candidate Samuel J. Tilden. The success of the banquet made the drink fashionable, later prompted several people to request the drink by referring to it as the names, the Manhattan cocktail, because the Manhattan Club is where it started. The original Manhattan cocktail, American whiskey, Italian vermouth, and bitters, and actually there are bitters in this as well. During Prohibition, everybody took a step down and used Canadian whiskey, little jab there, because it was available. So yeah, this is just the exact recipe that I used was 3 ounces of bourbon, or rye. I actually used rye, because I think the original recipe was rye. I used Bullet rye. I'm not sponsored by Bullet. I paid for these on my own. They have it at Costco, if that's what you want to know. 1 ounce of Martini and Rossi sweet vermouth, which is what I used. Two dashes of the Angostura. I got to figure out how to say that. Angostura bitters, which I used as well. I used a little bit more, and 1 maraschino cherry. So you don't stir the drink. You pour it into a larger glass filled with ice. You pour the ingredients in, and you stir it gently for 20 seconds. No shaking. And then you pour it into a chilled martini glass. The way they suggest to chill the glass is fill it with cold water, put some ice cubes in there. That chills the glass pretty quick. That was a long time ago that the glass was chilled, but the cocktail's still pretty cool. So that's kind of the history on the Manhattan.
So my second beverage is a beverage that I'm going to enjoy in great excess in about 2 weeks, which is the mojito. Most people are probably aware the mojito, of course, originates in Cuba, Part of the reason, of course, it originates in Cuba is Cuba has a long history of rum, but they also have it's called a yerba buena. I'm sure I massacred that name, but it's essentially a varietal of mint. So it's not just spearmint, but it's kind of a varietal mint, which has a few different mints mixed in. And I'll tell you, having of course mojito in Cuba, I did not know I enjoyed mojitos because I've had them before, but I did not enjoy them until I actually went to Cuba and had a Cuban mojito, and it absolutely knocked my socks off. And their recipe is a little bit different than what I've gone with. Admittedly, I cheaped out. I went with a mix because there's a lot of
Oh.
Ooh. I did not have the time to mortar and pestle the mint, get my hands on the mint. In Cuba, you actually put almost like a sea salt type sugar around the outside of the glass, makes a big difference. But I mean, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still a mojito. It's just not going to be a mojito you would get in Jamaica, Mexico, or Cuba. But having been there, having enjoyed them, I knew that in advance, and possibly cheating, they pair excellently with a variety of cigars. I mean, mojito is just a no-brainer drink that you can go with. And it, of course, like many things in Cuba, goes back to the 1500s. So that's, I mean, I was actually a little surprised by that. I wasn't expecting the drink to go back that long in history. I figured it was probably more of an 1800s, 1700s thing, but yeah, 1500s. And again, what's interesting about that is the reason there's so much mint and lime juice in this is to mask originally in the 1500s, of course, while they had rum, it was not good rum, and you're putting mint and lime in there to mask the sort of nasty alcohol bite of that rum and make the drink a lot more palatable.
I enjoy a mojito. They're, the couple years ago, they were the big drink when you go out. Actually, when I was in college, more like 10 years ago, everybody had, different kinds of mojitos or whatever. I had one in Chicago. We went to one of the TV chef people, guys. Rick Bayless is the guy who I'm talking about. He's got a couple restaurants in Chicago. I went to one of them, and they had it was like a blueberry mojito or something. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But when my wife and I went down to Mexico, to the all-inclusive resort vacation thing, they were making mojitos out of Havana Club, the Añejo 7. And that was, I didn't really like that on its own. I bought a bottle of it, got so excited when I was at the airport, and I bought it, and it turned out that it was one of the free booze that they had at the place, so I only drank like not even half that bottle in the week that I was there, but I probably drank more than a bottle of theirs, just didn't drink mine. But anyway, using that cocktail or that drink or that rum in those mojitos was just fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, but, I mean, and I'd agree with you. I think it's a combination of the Cuban rum and mint, and it combines to make for an excellent beverage. Again, obviously the mojito I'm having, not quite to that level, but certainly you get the sort of same general sense of the beverage. One of the things I actually was fooling around with before the show, and I realize it's ridiculous now because we're kind of halfway through the show, but it occurred to me that we should have done old-timey radio voices for the show, the sort of 1900. This is John and Rob sitting here enjoying our classic cocktails, waiting for the Giants to kick it off at 6 o'clock. I'll tell you what, it's the Game 7 of the World Series. It's going to be a heater of a game tonight. Because when I think of classic cocktails, I think of, not just the sort of Mad Men style, but like all the culture that goes along with that. So like 50s style TV shows, guys wearing suits regardless of their jobs, that kind of thing. And although it is, we're talking about everyman beverages here, everyman at that time was a little bit classier. Dudes did wear suits and ties, and that was sort of the standard accepted practice.
Yeah, you watch some of those old movies, and I often think in my head that if we could take the progress that society has made and incorporate some of those older things, like dressing up in a suit to go to a ball game, and bring that back into society, I would like that. But,
yeah.
I mean, the give and take, I would much rather have a a progressive society like we do now, as opposed to what it was like back in the 20s
Yeah.
and before,
I,
uh, or even
I
the
agree.
50s.
I agree. I think like one of the things that I've always joked about is I think it'd be kind of cool to have an old school theater, like a literally 30 style movie theater where people dress up and get classy. Because I think I like dressing in jeans and a t-shirt or a hoodie because it's cold. Um, but there's something to be said about putting on a suit and dressing up and feeling good about yourself, and the girlfriend or wife or significant other dresses up and you go out with them and have a good night. And I mean, it makes you feel good about yourself. I think it builds up your self-esteem.
That's not a bad idea. And if you're serving these cocktails at your movie theater, then you might be onto something. Just a quick little anecdote, side note on that note. Went to a Ben Harper concert 5 or 6 years ago, and they were having it at the Paramount in Oakland, which is kind of a classic theater. And they were doing small venues, classic theaters. This was, I think it's 10,000 people, tops. Might even be more like 8 or 5. I don't know. Small theater. And the band requested that people dress up and come to the concert and treat it like it's a big event. Not everybody did, but everybody in the section that we were sitting in, we were in the loge section of the balcony, like the first 5 or 6 rows.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of cool. I mean, I was in a suit. I was gonna wear a fedora, but I didn't have one. And my wife was in a dress, and she had kind of like a little shawl thing on. And everybody that we were sitting with, and it was all different. It's one thing about a Ben Harper concert, you're going to get a lot of different people. And it was a kind of a melting pot of people. But we were all everybody took it, not seriously, but took their request seriously. And it was a good time. We had a lot of fun. But anyway, but I digress. Getting back to the pairing here. This pairing is really good. There's the Manhattan. When you drink a Manhattan, it's a bit more astringent. You're going to get that that sweet vermouth flavor in there. If you've tasted sweet vermouth before, you know what that flavor I'm talking about. Basically, that's all you're getting is the bourbon and the vermouth. There's a little bit of bitters in there for some spice, but not much. It's a bright flavor in comparison to the more earthy flavor of the cigar. They balance each other out really well. It does bring out the sweetness in the cocktail, even though if you're drinking it on its own, you're not going to get a whole lot of sweetness. But with the spice of the cigar, the cocktail is definitely sweeter. I'm really enjoying this. This is probably something I'll have again.
Now, I'm actually having a different experience. While the mojito is not harming anything, I think a mojito, in my mind, and certainly from my previous experience, it goes along with your cigar, but it's not really doing anything for you. It's not taking away, but at the same time, it's not adding anything. It's not building any complexity in the cigar. It's not building any complexity in the drink. You drink it because it tastes good, and you can drink them all day long, and you can smoke almost anything with a mojito, and it doesn't blow your cigar out. So I feel like the mojito is a no-brainer pairing if you want to drink something and just want to smoke a cigar and you want something alcoholic, then a mojito is a good way to go. But if you're truly looking to pair and maybe get a little bit out of the drink and get a little bit out of the cigar, I don't think the mojito is the way to go. Even with the warped, which is not a full-bodied Maduro peppery cigar, it's not doing anything. The cigar is absolutely running over the mojito. I'm tasting the cigar. I get a little bit of lime off the mojito. That's about it.
Just a quick reminder for those of you guys listening on podcast. You're listening to Sharing Our Pairings, brought to you from cigarfederation.com. Thanks for checking us out. Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate, and I know we've experienced that a fair amount doing some of these pairings that we do, because again, we're not really going for what do I think is going to be the best pairing. We're trying to pair as much as we can in this time that we've got, and I like this format where we've gotten into 3 different drinks to pair. I think it gives us a fair amount of time to talk about each one, especially in this case because these are classic cocktails. We can talk about the history of the drink a little bit. Yeah, this pairing here for me is it's really good. I didn't think the Manhattan was going to pair very well, just because of that astringency that it has, but it almost cleans your palate every time you take a sip of it. So maybe it's really enhancing the cigar a little bit more than the cocktail, but in this case, I'm okay with that. If I were out at a bar somewhere and I was allowed to smoke at that bar for some weird reason, um, and I ordered a really nice drink, a really nice Manhattan, then maybe I wouldn't want to do this. But making it at home, for me, it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
Well, I definitely think. I mean, obviously, I'm really enjoying the cigar. It's clear I need to get my hands on some more of these now. We're not really doing a pairing here, review of the cigar because my palate is going to be completely shot from the alcohol. But this would definitely score in the 90s for me. You know, even while sitting down and reviewing, like immediately, you know, I'm about maybe a third of the way through, and I'm already thinking a 10 pack of these, like a box split of these, would be a no-brainer for me. I would absolutely love to smoke some of these. And in fact, like in my mind, I'm immediately going, this would be fantastic with a really nice Speyside Scotch, with the bourbon. Like this, it feels like this cigar was built to be paired with, you know, that little bit of spicy booze that's got a little bit of character. It doesn't run over the cigar, and I think it's a match made in heaven for me.
Yeah, I would agree. That's not to give too much away, but if you read my review, you'll probably expect this anyway. That cigar will be in my top 5, the new cigars for the year. That's a really good cigar. And actually, the La Colmena, which we don't need to go off on a warped tangent, but I actually just picked up one of the tins of the Unico, which they were only available to people at IPCPR, which is the La Colmena with that stinger tip in the torpedo that I don't think we got our hands on. I know I didn't. But Brett Harrington, a good guy from, he's over at SigFed. He runs a shop, and the name of his shop is escaping me, but he set aside one of those tins for me, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, the Fleur de Vailly is a great smoke. I need to pick up a few more of those, and I imagine Brett has those too. So if you're on SigFed, go look him up. He'll be able to, and I'm sure he'll ship them to you.
Hashtag vote no.
Yeah, I could be overstepping by saying that he does. Maybe he just did me a favor. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's a great cigar, and everybody knows how we feel about the drumstick. This is that first inch is so spicy.
Yeah.
And I always remember that, and then I forget like the next 6 inches. There's so much less spice, so much more flavor.
Yeah.
Fantastic cigar. Although something weird happened to my box. I haven't opened the box since I smoked one. There was 9 of them left. And if you're familiar with the box, it opens up, and the cigars actually kind of lift out a little bit. And there's this the tissue paper in there, and there's a little not a placard, but there's some text on a little piece of that thin paper. And somehow, like, the text kind of melted off the paper and onto the tissue paper, and it was all stuck together. I've never seen that before. I'm going to have to ask John about that, because it didn't damage the cigars. They were all in their cellos, thank God. But that was just weird. I've never seen anything like that. And I actually just opened, because I almost was going to smoke a Goldie Laguito number 5, and I've got a fresh box of those. And that's got a piece of that vellum paper in there. Yeah. And I'm actually going to take that out because I don't want to take the chance of that happening again.
And I absolutely agree with you on the drumstick. I mean, I think it only got bumped by an Opus X, and I think, you know, there's very few cigars that I could have smoked that would bump that drumstick at a #1 spot for me. And the Opus X did it, the Perfection X. If you haven't read that review, please do. But the drumstick to me was just, I mean, as soon as I smoked it, I immediately went, I got to get a box of these, because if I don't get a box of these and I go through the end of the year and I don't own a box of these, I'm going to be a very, very cranky surgeon.
It reminds me of the Mule Kick, also by Crowned Heads, the 4 Kicks Mule Kick. When I bought it, well, first time I smoked it, I didn't really like it, and then it grew into its flavor for me. It was far too spicy the first time I smoked it. But I kicked myself for not buying any more. And I actually just looked, and Sirius Cigars, which is where I got my box, still has them in stock. Has the 2013 drumstick. You can get a single or a box of 10. So
Sirius Cigars, based out of Houston. I don't think the sales tax there is very much, so you should jump on that.
Yeah, I didn't realize they still had them. I might get another box just to have them.
So I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move on to my last, because we're gonna be up against. For those who aren't aware, by Rob's hat. The Giants are playing Game 7 of the World Series tonight, and I don't want to keep him after the show because, if there was somehow a good football game on and my team was playing, and it was somehow a good game, which I can't imagine, I would definitely want to go and see that. So I'm gonna move on to my last pairing, which it's kind of a wild card for me, but I have to get some Canadian representation and some local representation. So this is a Caesar.
Yeah, I'm curious about this because what the hell?
Which I think we talked a little bit about this at the IPCPR because we did a lot of talking and smoking and drinking, and a lot of people will look at this and say, well, it's just a Bloody Mary. And saying it's just a Bloody Mary is like saying, well, I had a Glenlivet 12, so I've experienced all scotches. Well, Bloody Mary is like the foundation, the inspiration for this drink, but it is not a Bloody Mary. And I'll just go through it because it makes me crazy when people say it's just a spicy Bloody Mary because it's so far removed from what a Bloody Mary is. So it was invented in 1969 in Calgary. That's where I am. That's my home city. It's one of the things that we invented here. There are 350 million Caesars consumed annually in Canada. Give you a sense of how popular this drink is. So that's pretty popular. Canadians.
350 million?
350 million.
Is that like 2 per capita?
Essentially, yeah.
Really? That's a good guess.
And I think it's higher than that. Like I think that's probably conservative because, to be honest, I bet it's probably closer to 3 or 4 per capita. Like I bet that number is probably
drinking age.
Yeah. So this is, yes, it is very similar to a Bloody Mary in that it has tomato juice. Where it differs, and I know a lot of people are going to groan, is it has clam broth in it. Clam broth. It sounds terrible. If you think clam broth, you're like, okay, dude, what are you doing putting clam broth? But it adds this, and actually, I'll talk about the drink and then I'll talk a little bit more in detail. So what it is, it's Clamato, which is a proprietary combination from moths of tomato juice and clam broth, Worcester sauce, celery salt, and then the proper garnish, unlike the modern day hipsters of putting limes and whatever the hell else, is celery stalk. You don't use the celery stalk, I'm ashamed of you. The guy who made it, who was a restaurant owner, owned an Italian restaurant, and the inspiration for this was spaghetti alla vongole, which is spaghetti in clams. So it's spaghetti with tomato sauce, but it's got a little bit of that, that fishiness, a little bit of that clam, but not an overpowering amount, just a little bit to give it character. And the recipe for it, we call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 ounce of vodka, 2 splashes of hot sauce, so that could be Tabasco or whatever, Worcester, or not Worcester, any other kind of hot sauce. 3 dashes of salt, in this case celery salt, 4 dashes of Worcester sauce, and 5 ounces of Clamato juice. And that is the proper recipe for a Caesar.
Huh. I'm intrigued by it. But I don't know if I'm going to run right out and have one. Although, I always kind of thought that Bloody Mary was just kind of weird. I never really was into it. And then my wife and I took a trip down to Monterey, and we were driving home in the morning. She was driving. I wasn't. And we stopped for breakfast. And we were at this nice restaurant out overlooking Monterey Bay, and the waiter came up, and I ordered a Bloody Mary, and my wife looked at me like I was nuts, because I'd never had one. And since then, hooked. I love Bloody Marys. I don't drink them that often. I'll usually drink them if we're tailgating or on like a football Sunday if the Niners are playing a 10 o'clock game. I'll have a Bloody Mary, although she likes to have mimosas, so I just kind of give into that because she lets me watch football. So, but yeah, the inclusion of the Clamato is interesting. I know they sell it here locally, so I'll have to give that a try.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I see it all the time.
Wow.
And I think they actually sell in a tall boy a Budweiser with Clamato in it.
Yeah, it's a very popular drink, half and half, Clamato and I don't remember the name of it is, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just here they just market it as it's a Bud with Clamato in it. I don't know if they call it something special, but my dad used to call them Bloody Beers. He would always make it beer, tomato juice, and he he would get because you can get clam juice in like a little jar, like
Yeah.
you would get bitters in, and
Or
he
a
would
can.
just
Yeah.
and he would just sprinkle it in there on his own. I always thought it was disgusting, but I never tasted it. For my third cocktail, it's pretty watered down now, but mint julep. Um, again, a ton of different ways to make a mint julep. Everybody says muddle the mint. I don't muddle it. I kind of bruise it. I just kind of squeeze it in my hands to kind of to let the scent and the smell out. And then I take it 5 or 6 leaves, so squeeze them in my hand, and then I kind of grease the inside of the glass, if you will, the whole glass, the rim, the inside, the whole thing, and the bottom. Leave that in there. And then what were the exact? It was like it's 2.5 ounces of bourbon, which I use Eagle Rare, and Eagle Rare 10, and half an ounce of simple syrup, which simple syrup is just equal parts sugar and water, and you boil it until it creates a syrup. You boil it for like five minutes, then it keeps forever, and you stir it. You don't shake it, and that's how I make mine, and I'm always really happy with mine. This one's a little bit sweet. I think I put a little bit too much simple syrup in there, but it's also after having had these other cocktails that didn't have a whole lot of sweetness to it. The sweetness of this is over the top. This reminds me of the soda episode. The way that smoking the cigar and drinking the mint julep brings out so much of the sweetness. It's almost cloyingly sweet. To me, it's okay. It's not something that I'm too excited about. History on the mint julep, it's all over the place. According to Wikipedia, the origins of the mint julep are clouded, and we may never be definitively known. It was originally prescribed and appears in literature as early as 1784 for, quote, it says, quote, sickness at the stomach with frequent retching and at times difficulty swallowing. I then prescribed her an emetic, some opening powders, and a mint julep, which was basically given to people to keep them from getting sick, which is odd. And then all of a sudden people started watching horses and wearing big hats, and that's all we really know about the mint julep from here on out. But damn good cocktail. I could drink it all day, every day. That's the problem with making mint juleps is once I make one, I have like 4 of them, and then it gets weird. But pairing it with a cigar, maybe not the best. I wanted to stick with a bourbon theme here. But it's fine, but it doesn't do anything for the cigar, and the cigar doesn't do anything for it. So.
The interesting thing is, I actually figured the Caesar would be just an awful pairing because Clamato is a different taste. I've never really paired a Caesar with anything. It is particularly spicy. It's got a little bit of bite to it, which is why I like it, and I think why it's very popular in Canada because it does have character. But it's actually not that bad. The celery salt and the spices in it actually are bringing out some floral notes in the warped cigar, which I totally wasn't expecting. I honestly figured there would just be like I would take 2 sips of it, and I'd have to stop drinking because it would just be nasty with cigar. But it's actually not that bad. It's not my favorite pairing. I'd have to say so far tonight the old-fashioned clear winner. Caesar, unfortunately, even though it's not the best pairing in the world, edges out the Mojito because it's got more character, more oomph to it. Probably not something I would do on a regular basis. Not the pairing to go with. But, Caesar's an acquired taste. So.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the Manhattan with the Headley Grange here. The pairing is really good. They balance each other nicely. The flavors, while they don't necessarily complement, they conflict in the right way. It's a nice pairing, and I actually think I normally don't make the Manhattans. I usually have my wife make those because she's better at it. But the one that I made today was pretty damn good, so I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, really, none of them were bad. But the only real true pairing, I think, was with the Manhattan. The other two are fine together. But for me, a pairing, it's got to do something to together they're great, or it's enhancing one or the other, and none of that happened with the other two. It was just two different flavors, and it was fine. But with the Manhattan, it really does. I think it makes the cocktail better, and it makes the spice in the cigar stand out just a little bit more.
All right, so we're up against the clock, and I want to. We've got this habit, this trend of doing NFL at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
To get this done, nailed down, so that you can fly off and watch your show and enjoy it, or your game, I should say. And good luck to the Giants tonight. I hope they win handily.
Thank you.
So we'll just hop right in.
Do it.
There's some interesting games this weekend. Interesting game Thursday night. The Saints face Carolina in Carolina. What are your thoughts on that, Rob?
Carolina's defense last year was their calling card. This year, not so much. I mean, I honestly don't even know what their record is, but I had their defense on several of my fantasy teams. I thought I was making a smart move, and I've dropped them. They've just been horrible. The Saints look like they're coming around. My boy Jimmy Graham's getting healthy again. They have it's Mark Ingram. It's Mark, right?
Yeah, Mark Ingram.
Running the ball again. He went off this past weekend. He gives them a nice balance, a nice power run game. I think the Saints are going to be tough from here on out. So I'll take the Saints.
The Saints, yeah, I'm going to go Saints as well. Although they haven't played some of the best ball this season, I think they're kind of hitting their midseason stride. Carolina, although they did hold the Seahawks last week, no offense to Carolina, I don't think that was as much Carolina doing great as it was Seahawks doing poorly, so I'm going to go with the Saints in that one as well. Next up, Sunday morning, Jacksonville faces the Bengals in Cincinnati.
The Bengals.
Yeah, that's.
Just move on.
We really need to say, we'll just move on. Bengals are going to. Sorry, Jacksonville. Bengals. That's an easy pick.
Although the Jacksonville's running back, that new kid they got running the ball, is pretty exciting.
Yeah, he can move. Buccaneers in Cleveland to face the Browns.
Gotta go Browns. The
Bucks. Browns as well.
The Bucks look confused. I think the Browns are confused. I think we're getting pretty close to Johnny Manziel taking the ball. But they've got a decent little running game. Their defenses look solid. I think the Browns could be good. They're going to get Josh Gordon back here in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I think they're probably a year away, maybe two. But if they can keep that defense moving in the right direction, they could be a solid team. But yeah, I'd take the Browns.
Arizona Cardinals go to Dallas to face the Dallas Cowboys and an injured Tony Romo.
Is Romo playing? We don't know yet, huh?
We don't know, but I mean, you can slag the Cowboys, you can slag Romo, but the guy's a competitor. He's playing that game. I don't care what the docs say. I don't care whether they got him on the injury list. He's playing in that game. What are your thoughts?
I think the Cardinals are a good team.
Mm-hmm. And
now that they've got Carson Palmer back, which just feels weird saying that. Now that they've got Carson Palmer back, they're going to be great. No, they've got a good offense. Andre Ellington's an explosive player. Their defense is solid. I think that's going to be a good game. Under normal circumstances, everybody healthy, I'd probably take the home team. And I probably still will. I think if Romo plays, I think effective. I think that Dallas will win that game, but it would not surprise me if the Cardinals won.
We're going to split that one because as I love the Cowboys. I just think the Cardinals are playing good ball. I think even Cardinal fans are not necessarily confident in their team. I think the Cardinals are going to take this one. I think it's going to be a really good game. You're going to want to watch this one, especially the morning games. This will be one of the better games. Philadelphia Eagles face the Houston Texans in Houston.
Philly.
Yeah. No question.
Houston's boring. J.J. Watt is a phenomenal player. They've got some nice players on defense, but I can't name two players on their offense right now. Who's their quarterback?
Fitzmagic.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll pass. I'll pass. I'll take Philly.
The just end their seasons from New York travel to Kansas to face the Kansas City Chiefs.
The what? Oh, the Jets.
The Jets, yeah.
Yeah, you got to go.
I can't even say the team name.
You got to go Kansas City there, bro. Sorry.
I think the spread on this is like 17.5 points. No joke. We'll just move on. I'm
a big spread for an NFL game. Wow.
The other game, the morning game that I think is going to be really interesting, San Diego Chargers versus Miami Dolphins in Miami.
Oh, that is a good game.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be as good as the Dallas and Cardinals game. Those are the kind of games I like to watch when I don't care who wins. Just want to watch it because I think it's going to be two teams that are pretty evenly matched, and it'll be fun to watch.
No dog in that hunt.
Yeah, exactly. I think San Diego will win that game.
I think so too, and that's not a takeaway from the Dolphins, although fuck the Dolphins. I think San Diego is. It's going to be a tight game. Like this game is going to this is one of those games where you're going to see whoever's got the possession of the ball at the end of this game is going to march downfield and kick a field goal. And I think it's going to be a 3-point game. But I think the Chargers are going to control the ball in the last quarter. Redskins face the Vikings in Minnesota.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about a dog shit matchup.
Could not care any less about that game.
Yeah. Who's the home team?
Minnesota.
I'll take Minnesota.
I'm going to go with Washington on that for no reason other than the fact that Washington had a little bit of a beatdown on Dallas. I know that was a divisional game. Vikings just haven't been playing good football. I think they lucked out this last weekend, barely won the game, pure luck. I'm going with the Redskins on that, so we're going to split that one. Trap game of the week, which I'm sure you're sweating after tonight's baseball game. The Rams go to San Francisco to face the 49ers.
Niners. And I'll lay the points.
I'm going with the Niners, but this one makes me nervous. I'm not going to lie.
You know what? I think the Niners are starting to get healthy. They're getting some players back on the offensive line as they're losing them. I think Vernon Davis is going to come back healthy after a week off, learn how to catch the ball again. I see the start getting more of a use of Frank Gore. I think the Niners will win that game handily.
The most interesting game of the week, I don't care who you are, the Denver Broncos travel to Foxborough to face the New England Tom Brady Patriots.
Denver.
I'm going to go with Tom Brady and the Patriots, and I'll tell you why. Tom Brady is something like 25-3 at home. I've seen him dismantle teams, including my own, at home. I think this is going to be an incredible game to watch. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But I think if this was in Denver, it'd be a no-brainer. I'd go with Manning. But in Foxborough, man, very, very tough to take the Patriots. I'm going with the Patriots on this one.
You think this is a precursor to the AFC Championship game?
Absolutely. That's going to be the most. I think you nailed it. This is going to be the AFC Championship game, no question in my mind. The AFC Championship game is going to be the most interesting game of the playoffs next to the Super Bowl, and it's going to be Denver, New England again, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the AFC Championship.
Cool.
Oakland, go Raiders! Traveled to Seattle to face the Seahawks.
Seahawks.
Now,
that's an easy one.
It does seem like an easy one, and the point spread on this is absurd. It's like 14.5 or 15.5 points. I'm going to go with Seattle, but I want to add my sort of asterisk for the week, which is I have very uneasy feelings about this game. I'm extremely tempted to take Oakland because I feel like Seattle has looked terrible the last couple weeks. I feel like they're going to underestimate Oakland, and Oakland can be a very dangerous team. I'm going to say I'm going with Seahawks, asterisk. I would not be surprised if the Raiders come in and shock the world by beating the Seahawks at home.
You know what? It would be the only time I ever root for the Raiders. When you're talking about a point spread like that in an NFL game, that's a big point spread.
It's huge.
And, if the Raiders come out and they have a decent start, they've got a young quarterback who, might not know any better. And if he starts completing some passes and making some big plays, who knows? But I don't see the Raiders winning that. But if it's, like you said, 15.5 points or something, I don't know if Seattle covers that. They haven't been scoring the way they were last year.
No. The absolute best possible next to the New England game for the Sunday night game, Baltimore Ravens in Pittsburgh to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Classic divisional matchup. This actually has a 0-point spread. 0 points.
I've never heard of that before. I really don't like either team. I really don't like either team. So you know what? I'm gonna call a tie. I'll take the spread.
Wow. Okay. Steelers came out last week and absolutely dropped a bomb on the Colts. It is uncharacteristic to the way they've been playing all season, which is kind of haphazard football. Um, on the other hand, I feel like this is the time of the season where the Ravens tend to hit the stride and they end up taking the division. If for nothing else, because of the time of the year, the week 8, I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens in this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't care about either team.
Fair enough. Last but not least, before we let you go here, the Indianapolis Colts travel to New York to face the Giants.
Colts and the Giants. I like the Colts, and honestly, I haven't been following the NFL as tightly as I have been in the past, and I didn't even realize that Pittsburgh beat the Colts last week. One thing I've noticed is that it's been a very up and down season for the entire league.
Yep.
There's few teams who go out every week and play consistent. And honestly, the Cardinals are one of those teams that are playing consistent ball. Mm-hmm. But that's not this game. I like the Colts.
I like the Colts as well. This is the time of the year where the Giants inexplicably win a bunch of games, including divisional, and then somehow sneak in with a wild card spot. That's not happening this weekend. Colts are going to take this one. There's going to be a lot of talk about whether Eli's lost his stride, etc., etc. I'm going with the Colts as well.
So, one last parting sports note.
Please do.
Just got this via text message from my buddy Garrett, who is also my backup at the Giants. He says the Giants have outscored their opponents 44-9 in their last 7 elimination games. 44-9.
Now, just for the listeners out there, we just switched from football to baseball.
Oh, correct. Yeah, it's the baseball Giants, the San Francisco baseball Giants. So, first pitch is on the way, so I'm going to get out of here. Let's wrap it up.
We're going to wrap it up. Thanks very much again for our listeners. We went a little over time tonight because we got excited. Great pairing. Great idea from Robbie Raz. We're going to be back again in 2 weeks when Logan returns from India for a tea show. Not sure whether we're going to have 2 hosts or 3 hosts. Might be my last show of the season because I'm probably going to be doing it in the snow. But really appreciate our live listeners. Really appreciate our podcast listeners. Make sure to tune in tomorrow night, Thursday night, for Cigar Chat. Who do we have on tomorrow night, Rob?
We have Christian Arroyo, CLE Cigars.
CLE Cigars.
So that should be a good show. We were going to have Gabby Arroyo on the show as well, but she's under the weather. So it'll just be it's going to be Christian, and it's going to be you and I believe.
Woo! So Redux, back to back. So you can't miss that. So we're gonna let Rob go. Make sure to tune in 2 weeks. Don't miss Cigar Chat tomorrow night. Thanks again, and remember, drink better, drink responsible, drink a little less.